If you're riding a subway or a metro system, do you ever stop and ask yourself, I wonder how old this system is? Probably not, right? I mean, it feels like it's been around forever. But it's the stories of those original lines that are usually super fascinating. A few weeks ago, I rode the original section of the Washington, D.C. Metro. It's short and only 50 years old. New York City is a whole other beast. The original subway line is over 120 years old, and today I'm going to show you exactly where you could take the train on that first day in 1904. It may surprise you. New York City is America's largest city, and it has been for a very long time. As early as the 1880s, the streets of Manhattan were already completely clogged up, and people were looking for a way to move around faster. Overcoming political obstacles, entrepreneurs began building elevated railways, letting commuters soar above the gridlock below. They weren't enough, though. New York needed a subway. Building a subway was easier said than done. Before construction could even start, funding had to be secured and political permission had to be obtained. Not an easy feat in a city with so much corruption. To avoid corruption, the city set up a board of rapid transit commissioners, with lifetime appointments for the board members. They were responsible for picking a company that would build a subway. They chose John B. McDonnell, an engineer famous for successfully building several big important tunnels, including the Howard Street Tunnel in Baltimore. He could build the line, but he did not have the money to operate service. August Belmont Jr., a wealthy Wall Street bro, did. So he founded the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, who operated the first subway line. Interestingly, August was the son of the president of the commission, so much for no corruption, but that first subway line did open on October 27, 1904, on schedule and not over budget. Today, the New York City subway stretches over 250 miles. It has over 400 stations and moves 2 billion people a year. Running 24/7, New York simply wouldn't function without it. It's a cultural symbol and an engineering masterpiece, even if many parts of it are in dire need of repair. The scale of the subway is so large that in any metric, North American transit systems are always ranked, not including New York City. There is simply no comparison. But what was that original line like 120 years ago? Well, today we are going to find out. Much of the research for today's video comes from this phenomenal book, Subway, by John E. Morris, which I picked up at the New York Public Library gift shop. The original subway opened at the very start of the 20th century. It's over 120 years old. In the year 1900, a groundbreaking ceremony was held right in front of the New York City Hall to mark the start of construction on the original subway line. Fast forward to 1904, and the first subway line officially opened. Now, the first subway actually takes a route that today you can no longer do with just one train, but we're going to follow that route and see where it takes us. And so the journey begins here at City Hall Brooklyn Bridge Station. We're going underground, and we won't see daylight for a while, until we're almost 150 blocks north of here. I went ahead and bought my first Omni card. I didn't need one, but I wanted one, so... The first part of our trip will see us riding the 4, 5, and 6 trains, and we're going northbound, but I've made my way over to the southbound platforms. A 6 train is pulling in, terminating here at City Hall. Despite this being the end of the line, I'm going to get on the train. Normally, that's a bad idea, probably illegal too. But here, it's okay, and it lets you catch a glimpse of one of the coolest features of the New York City subway. So the subway started at City Hall Station, but not the City Hall Station that we use today. This is the old City Hall Station. The 6 train loops underneath City Hall to turn back north, passing through this abandoned station. It was here where in 1900, the official groundbreaking ceremony for the subway was held, with a silver shovel from Tiffany's. Really. And until 1945, this was the starting point for trains on this line. It was closed because the trains were made longer, but they couldn't make the platform any longer. And really, the other City Hall station is so close by, there wasn't much reason to keep it open. Sometimes they give tours of the station. It's my dream to do one of these someday. You may also recognize this as the location where Mayor Zoran Mamdani was recently inaugurated. And with that, we're back at City Hall Brooklyn Bridge Station, and let's take the 6 train up a few stops. Like I said, construction on the original subway began in 1900, and this was of course after years of planning. And the first segment opened on October 27, 1904, running from City Hall to 145th Street, using a route that might surprise you. It was operated by the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, or IRT. The subway was dug primarily in ways that seem surprisingly simple, laborers using pickaxes and hydraulic jacks. There were as many as 12,000 workers digging. Many of them were recent immigrants. At a few points along the way, the rock was so hard that they had to use dynamite to blast their way through.
So the subway was built using the cut and cover method. Basically, they would dig up the street, dig a trench, install the tracks, and then cover it up again. So they tried to follow existing streets as much as possible, but sometimes that just wasn't possible, and so they had to create their own streets, like Lafayette Street.
Technically, what happened here is that there were 2 separate streets with buildings in between. The buildings were demolished for the subway, and then the streets became one and were renamed as part of Lafayette Street. Because the city required the streets to be usable, they covered the giant trenches with wooden planks. People, horses, and trolleys continued chugging along overhead, although some people did fall in. Interestingly, the very first construction project on the subway did not involve any actual tunnel building, but the relocation of a sewer line. One of many. 14th Street Union Square Station shows another interesting result of them using the cut and cover method. One of my most popular videos is already about this station and its moving platforms. I'll explain it briefly here. Basically, the streets above curve. It's where 4th Avenue turns into Park Avenue, and as such, the southbound platforms curve along with it. A curved platform leaves wide gaps, which is why they've installed these pneumatic gap fillers. Little steps that push out from the platform onto the train so that there's no gap between the platform and the door when you're boarding. There were several New York City subway stations that had these, but 14th Street Union Square on the southbound 4, 5, and 6 platforms is the only place where you can still find them. You know, sometimes when I ride the subway, I think of what it would be like to actually operate a city transport system myself. But then I remember that I have City Transport Simulator 2026 installed on my PC. This video is sponsored by City Transport Simulator 2026. This game is available on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox. This game puts you in the driver's seat of a city bus or a tram and lets you deal with all sorts of things that bus drivers do. Help passengers board, handle ticketing, and of course, pay attention to the road. What makes the 2026 version so cool is that it's the most realistic version of the simulator yet. One of the ways they've done this is by adding dynamic weather to the simulator. Not every day can be sunny. Real-world weather, like rain or snow, can impact visibility and make driving more difficult. Here in the simulator, you can step up to the challenge and drive your passengers safely, rain or shine. There's a basic package available, but you can also upgrade to the expert package. If you're looking to save, there's a season pass which gives you 40% off all downloadable content. Start playing City Transport Simulator 2026 today, and thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. Sometimes you don't always get it right at the first try, but there is one thing the original subway absolutely got right immediately: the fact that it was built with 4 tracks. 4 tracks allows for express service. On this part of the subway, the 6 runs local, making all stops, while the 4 and 5 are express, making only the most important stops. The quadruple track layout makes sure that local trains are not holding up faster express trains. Express service allows you to make trips across long distances in a matter of minutes, a huge advantage in a city this big. I mean, we're already at 42nd Street Grand Central, where we're actually going to leave the 4, 5, and 6 trains behind us.
So we've arrived at Grand Central 42nd Street. Now today the 4, 5, and 6 continue up Lexington Avenue, but back in 1904 that was not the case. Instead, trains made a left turn towards Times Square, which interestingly also got its name in 1904. I am transferring to the shuttle to Times Square. Now today this is kind of a New York subway oddity, back and forth, only 2 stops, but it wasn't built that way. It actually used to be part of the original subway.
If you're a tourist, or maybe even a New Yorker, you might have wondered why this shuttle exists. I mean, it's convenient, sure, connecting two of the city's most popular destinations, but did they really build an isolated system just to shuttle people back and forth on this small distance? There's cheaper ways to do that, right? Well, it's not an isolated system, actually. If you look at the southern track here, you'll see it extends beyond the platform into a tunnel. That track is physically connected to the 4, 5, and 6 tracks that we just rode. Did you know that? Let's hop on a shuttle and I'll explain. As you can see, a bunch of the seats have been removed. Capacity is the name of the game here. If we look at a map of the subway and then get rid of all the lines except the 4, 5, 6, the shuttle, and the 1, 2, 3, you'll see an H shape. Well, these 2 legs of the shape are not original. It wasn't until 1918 that both were open, and the line across 42nd Street was truncated to just a shuttle service. So yes, the 42nd Street shuttle was once part of the through service on the original subway, which explains why these tracks exist. Although it's somewhat of a miracle that they've lasted for over a century. Due to the short and isolated nature of this line, there have been not 1, not 2, but 3 proposals to replace it with a conveyor belt. The first was in 1923. Then in 1948, the Goodyear Company proposed a carveyor system, little carts that moved along a belt, interestingly without rubber tires. And in 1978, there was one more study to turn it into a moving walkway, this time done by the feds. The original line was quadruple track, just like the rest of the subway, and when it became a shuttle, 1 track fell out of use and was removed in the 50s. In the 60s, they experimented with an automated train, although there was an attendant on board. Unfortunately, the automated train burned down in a fire in 1964, and that was the end of that program. Most recently, the shuttle was extensively renovated. In 2021, the new layout opened. Instead of 3 tracks, 2 with 3-car trains and 1 with a 4-car train, there are now only 2 tracks, but both tracks now being used by 6-car trains. This delivered an overall capacity increase.
So yeah, the 42nd Street shuttle is fascinating. 2 tracks, 2 trains, 2 stations, just back and forth all day. But you can see that they curve, and actually the northern track even connects to the subway tracks under 7th Avenue. That's where we're going next. We're going to take either the 2 or the 3 train north towards Harlem.
Yep, after a brief interruption to travel west, we are now going north again. From here on out, we are traveling on the 1, 2, and 3 trains. While our final destination is on the 1, that train runs local here, so we will take an express first until we reach 96th Street. At 96, we'll transfer to the 1. While we've talked about the many accomplishments of the first subway, and there are many more we still need to discuss, of course there also are tragic aspects of the construction story. I mentioned people falling into the trenches from street level. Many survived, but some didn't. There were also casualties from fires and blasting accidents. The original subway cost the lives of 54 people, and injured at least 300 others. Like I mentioned earlier, many of these people were immigrants. Also worth mentioning are the animals involved, mostly mules, who were used to haul away dirt and debris from the construction sites. One mule was named Jim, and he was kept in the dark tunnels for 2 years, never opening his eyes, and completely numb to the dynamite blasts. Poor thing. Speaking of dirt, what the workers excavated was eventually used to build reclaimed land in the harbor. Both Ellis Island and Governor's Island were expanded using subway dirt. Combined with the fact that over 2,000 old subway cars have been given a second life as artificial reefs in the Atlantic, and the ocean has a lot more of the New York subway in it than you might think. Anyway, we've made it to 103rd Street on the 1 train. Despite the dirt and grime, subway stations are beautiful. One of my favorite things about the subway is that they use mosaics to create things as mundane as station signs. Travel throughout the system to find extravagant tile work and all other kinds of art. That's original and intentional. The subway was meant to be beautiful. It was meant to be bright too, wherever possible, with glass tiles letting in natural light from upstairs. While the elevated lines had bare, boring stations, the subway lines had these intentionally beautiful stations. Coming up, we have one of the most interesting stations. It's one that surprised me. We suddenly pop out of the tunnel and find ourselves on a very tall viaduct, pulling into 125th Street Station, formerly known as Manhattan Street. Here, the train crosses a valley that runs east-west across the island. It would have been possible to dig underground, but that meant the trains would have had to run on steep ramps, so they built the viaduct instead, keeping the line mostly level. It runs for 13 blocks and is supported by special arches that were meant to leave enough room below for the trolleys to pass underneath. Of course, today, the subway has many elevated sections, some 40% of the network. In fact, the oldest elevated section still used by the subway today is in Brooklyn and was opened in 1885, almost 2 decades before the first subway line. If you count all the tracks that currently make up the subway system, there are segments of the network that are older than the line that we've been looking at today. But it is called the subway, and those older elevated lines were part of a different system before they were incorporated into the subway. So I think it's fair to say that this underground line is still the original New York City subway. Since 1904, the system has expanded exponentially. Initially, there were 2 companies that operated subway lines, the IRT and the BMT. In the 1930s, the city-owned independent subway system, or IND, came into play, bringing the total number of operators to 3. In the 1940s, the city bought up all the operators. They merged the former BMT and IND lines into one system, the B division, while the former IRT lines, like the one we are on now, became the A division. A division train services have numbers, like the 1 train, while B division services have letters, like the A train. There are also some differences in train and tunnel size between the 2 divisions. Alright, this is 145th Street on October 27th, 1904. This is as far as you could go from City Hall Station. This is the end of the very original subway line. However, almost immediately after 145th Street opened, 157th Street opened as well, so I'm going to go over there and include it as part of this video. In 1953, service was taken over by the New York City Transit Authority, which became part of the state-level Metropolitan Transportation Authority, or MTA, in 1968, which brings us to the present day. It's interesting to see that these stations had toilets on the platforms. Anyway, today a fare on the subway is $3, but do you know what it was back in 1904? 5 cents, a nickel. And it remained 5 cents all the way until 1948, when the fare was raised to 10 cents. Alright, 157th Street, we've done it. We've ridden the entire original New York City subway. That's so cool how many different parts of Manhattan it travels through, even that very first line from 1904. The subway has expanded so much since then, becoming the largest rail transit system in North America, and it's always been one of my favorites. So I'm glad I could make this tribute to it. Now I'm really hungry, so I'm gonna go see if there's any bagels upstairs. After going upstairs and briefly looking around this part of Washington Heights, I found a bagel shop called Bo's Bagels, which I thought was a fun name. I gotta say, the sandwich I got was really good.
Anyway, that's all for today. I love coming to New York. I love riding the New York subway. It's so interesting to see how much has changed since its original creation 120 something years ago. If you enjoyed this video or if you learned something new, please consider subscribing to Trains Are Awesome. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.